Alright, to make your coil pot, you're going to need a small chunk of clay to get started because you're going to start with the base. So I'm just going to cut a small piece here and I'm going to make kind of like a patty. I'm going to flatten this out. Don't make it too thin. You want it to be about 1 inch thick. And then I need something round to make a circle, a perfect circle. So I'm going to use this cup here. I'm just going to trace that. So there's my circle. And I'm going to cut this out. Okay, so you can see it's still kind of thick in the middle, so I'm going to flatten this out a little bit more. And then what I like to do to smooth this edge out is hold it in the center and roll it like a wheel. And that'll create like a nice, see how it created like a nice flat edge there. Alright, so there's the base of my pot. Now the size of the base of your pot will be determined by how big your pot is. You don't want this to be too small. If your pot curves out a lot, you want to maybe start with a larger base. Okay, so now I'm going to start rolling out coils. So I'm going to take this extra piece of clay I had here. I'm going to roll it in my hands first. And then I'm going to roll it on the table using one hand and using the whole length of my hand. I'm going back and forth from one end of the coil to the other. Skip any parts of the coil that might be thinned out a little bit more than the rest, because again the goal here is to make this coil the same thickness all the way through. So now at this point I'm kind of just skipping around to the thick parts. Okay, and there's my coil. Now I'm going to determine how much of this coil I actually need. I don't need it all. Cut off the excess, blend it together, and then I'm going to score and slip. Water here, my little water here. Whoops, that was too much. So you don't want to have too much water, because if I spilled a full cup of water, that would have made a giant mess. But you have your handy sponge here to clean up. Alright, I don't want my table to be too wet because everything's going to be slipping all over the place. Okay, a little bit of water here. Put it on top. Use your spoon to blend this coil into your base. So I'm just going to blend a small amount of this coil as I work my way around. I recommend you do this while it's flat on your table. I'm holding it up so you can see what I'm doing. But I recommend keeping it down and just rotating it. And it looks really rough because of the way I blended it, but as I add a few more coils, then I'm going to rib it to smooth it out. Okay, so I'm going to do another one. This coil I made is too short. But what I can do is piece together coils. I'm going to roll out a new one here. That's roughly the same size as that other one. It doesn't have to be one continuous coil. You don't want to waste that. That's a nice coil there. You don't want to have to waste that, start over. So I only need about 2 inches of this coil. So your first 2 coils, you're going to want to just stack these right on top of each other. Now, most of your designs, your coil pot is going to start skinny and then it's going to get wider. So in order for it to get wider, my next coil, I'm going to make the ring slightly larger. So let me put this one on. It's going right on top. Blend it. Okay, now my next coil, take a chunk of this clay here, give myself some room to roll out a coil. So this one's going to be a slightly larger ring because I want my pot to get wider. There's moisture here on the table, so the coil's sliding around. Water over here. Okay, make sure this is round. Okay, so now rather than putting this directly on top, if I keep putting these coils directly on top, this pot's just going to go straight up and it's going to be a cylinder. So now for this next coil, I'm going to put it slightly on the outer edge. And by doing this with each coil, if I keep building this out, then the pot's going to get wider and wider. So I'll score and slip this on. And I'm going to blend that in. You also want to make sure that the amount of hangover here from the clay, from this coil to this one, you know, let's say this is 1/4 of an inch here. You want that to be the same thickness all the way around, or the same hangover all the way around. Okay, now at this point I'm going to rivet. You don't want to wait till you get really high because there's just more that you have to rib all at once. It's easier to do it in sections. Supporting it on the inside while I do this so it doesn't cave in. Starting from the bottom and working my way up. I'm just rotating this and going all the way around. I think I went around twice already, but you can see now how it's narrower here than it is here because I put that coil on the outer edge. So you'll repeat this process until you get to the halfway point of your pot, and then when you're ready to start closing it, the coils will go on the inside edge. So take one more coil here. If while you're rolling these coils and they kind of flatten out, so they look like this, if that happens, stand it up, push it down a little bit, and then roll it some more. And you might have to do that a few times throughout rolling these coils if they keep flattening out. And that could be either you're pushing too hard, you're not pushing hard enough. Okay, so I'm going to take this coil, to put it on the inside edge, score and slip, and you'll see now that the pot is getting smaller. Let's pretend I scored and slipped that on. So you can see how now it's curving in because I put the coil on the inside. Now if I put the next one on the inside, it'll get even smaller. Take any extra clay that you might have, put it back in your bag so it doesn't dry out. And that's it.